But whilst I feel slightly uncomfortable in talking about Christopher when he's still here, Baden, so I'll bring him in. Christopher, you can't hide away from the fact that you were convicted of theft and you were a thief.
I fully accept that I was convicted of theft. I wouldn't refer to myself as a thief. I would refer to myself as somebody with a previous conviction. I stole something, but as my colleague Chris was explaining, I think we use these terms criminal, ex-offender, ex-con all interchangeably, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why, as a society, we have an issue with accepting people with convictions. We don't understand what people go through after they've been convicted of that, and what they've done since that point, and that's very important.
Chris Bath, do you see reformed offenders, I should say, coming to you saying, look, Chris, I cannot get a job, and then, all of a sudden, they turn back into crime?
I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I think that certainly our experience, because we've got an online discussion forum connected to our website where a lot of our members discuss these issues, they feel a great frustration. And I think the question they raise is, it seems to me that society is saying, go and do crime again. It seems to be, they don't want to do that, and they may have no intention of it.
But that's what I mean, Chris. If they think that society has turned their back on them, it's obvious that they're going to descend back into a world of criminality.
I think it depends on the individual and the circumstance. Some people have a capability and a robustness that will mean that they, no matter what society, even if it pushes them right to the wall, will never go back to crime. Other people, reality is, if you've got society on one hand saying, we're not interested in you at all, we don't want to give you a job, go and make money, however else, but we're not interested. And on the other hand, you've got the criminal fraternity saying, we've got plenty of jobs for you, then that starts to be a very difficult decision to make, and it puts people in a sort of position that we don't want to be putting them. And on the issue that Norman raises about victims, I see the two issues as absolutely the same issue. If, as we know, getting people into stable employment means the risk of reoffending drops hugely. It's the most significant factor. And every time they don't reoffend, there isn't a victim at the end of that offence. And if you speak to sort of the reputable victims charities like Victim Support, for instance, they will support the idea that you want to catch the person, you want them to serve the appropriate punishment, and you want to make sure that they're rehabilitated and reintegrated. And that is exactly our perspective as well.
I've got a great text here from Paul in Pontypridd. It says, we have nearly 2 million people who have no conviction unemployed. If you're an employer, would you choose a convicted criminal or one with no conviction? We're all prejudiced in some way or another. Christopher, does Paul have a point there?
Well, I think he has a point in that when employers are faced with taking a person without a previous conviction and taking somebody with a previous conviction, most, not all, but most will take the one without a criminal conviction, and that's part of the problem. We have a system which has an appetite for criminal records going long into the future, or in this case, long into the past. In many cases, people who have 30, 40 years worth of experience and are still having their criminal records stopping them because of that exact problem, which is that when they are faced with somebody without a criminal record, they know it's obvious who the employer is going to choose. Picking up on Norman's point, yes, there are employers that employ people with convictions, but they're very few and far between. Very few are willing to put their head above the parapet and say that they will employ people with convictions. A number of employers will have glossy projects that work with people in prison and work on probation, but when you get out into society with a previous conviction, the same employers will routinely refuse you. And that's the problem. It's the systemic issue of dealing with conviction on a day-to-day basis that, as a society, we just don't understand how to do.
Chris Bath, just a final point to you. This is a text that's just landed in front of me. Do ex-offenders ever try seeing things from the victim's angle? I reiterate what I've said in the past. Let the do-gooders have the ex-criminals working for them. In your experience, do the ex-offenders see things from the victim's point of view?
Well, the point of view of the victim is that they want people caught, and let's be honest, in this country, the vast majority of people aren't actually caught for the vast majority of offences. So victims want people to be caught, they want them to face the appropriate consequences, but I think, and certainly leading charities like Victim Support think, from what they've told us, that what they want to see at that point is the person not doing it again. And that means rehabilitating them and reintegrating them.
Thank you all very much indeed. Christopher Stacey, Chris Bath, Norman Brennan, much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed.